dialing in remotely this evening. Could I ask members in the chamber, if you've got electronic devices on, please to mute them. The meeting may be recorded, and data collected during the recording of the meeting will be retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy. The recording of the meeting may be added to the Council's website. Members accessing the meeting remotely should use their Swilborough Council or KCC laptop to participate virtually. If you join using the link on the website or on a mobile and tablet device, it is not always possible to identify you, and you may not be recorded as being in remote attendance. Members, when you speak, can I ask you to speak loudly and clearly into your microphones and switch your microphone off after speaking. Otherwise, remote participants will be unable to hear the next speaker. So welcome everybody to the meeting. The following staff are in attendance: our Chief Executive, Larissa Reid, Director of Regeneration and Neighbourhoods. It's going to be remotely. I've got yes, remotely. Emma Wiggins, our Director of Resources, Lisa Fillery, Information Business Improvement Manager Tony Potter remotely, and Democratic Services Officer Billy Attaway, who's in physical attendance, and Joe Millard, who's available remotely. There is no fire drill planned this evening. Accordingly, if the alarm sounds, oh, and I missed one very important officer, is our monitoring officer, Robin Harris. There is no fire drill planned this evening, and if the alarm sounds, those in attendance should leave via the exits indicated outside and where directed. Is there any members that are unfamiliar with the exit routes? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. Have apologies for absence from Councillor Carnell, who's substituted by Councillor Cavanagh.
Thank you very much. We now move on to item 4, which are the reports. And the first item being the Performance Monitoring Report 2022-23. But just before we do, are there any declarations of interest, members, on any of the items this evening? Thank you. So it's the Performance Monitoring Report 2022-23, quarter 4. And I'll ask the officers to introduce it for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. So as you have the report in front of you on page 7, starting the report, this is a report for the year end for 2022-23. And moving straight onto the appendix, the body of the report. Part 1, the performance summary. So we have 31 key performance indicators that we report on. 2 of those indicators were red, that's 7%. 5 of those indicators were amber, that's 16%. And 24 of those indicators were green, that's 77%. So you can see under that table, the graph A is combined year end outcome, showing you the performance against previous 10 years. And then coming further down the page, you can see a graphical representation for the last 2 years for the quarterly performance, with a 77% green in the right-hand corner. And then graph C is the monthly indicators, which was just slightly above at 78%, and that's showing you the last 13 months. Moving on then to page 9, part 2, the year-end red indicators. So these are indicators which have more than 5% deviation from their target value. So we had 2 red indicators, as I said earlier. We have the audit recommendations implemented and the number of long-term empty homes brought back into use. I will just add a comment on that second one there. This indicator has been kept in the report, but actually we've stopped recording this because the position was previously vacant and has subsequently been deleted, as you can see in the commentary there. I'll move on unless stopped to the number 3, the year-end indicators for amber. So these are the indicators which are less than 5% deviation from the target. And you can see there's 5 entries in there. I would draw your attention to the 4th one down. With my sincere apologies, I've transposed the target value and the year-end value back to front in those columns. So the year-end value is 40.7% and the target was 42, i.e. the opposite way round to the way I've shown them on that table, for which I apologise. Moving on then down to page 10, we have a more of a table graphical view of the year-end performance. So it's showing you month on month for all of the indicators that we report on, showing you graphically there based on the red, amber, greens, how they perform through the year for both the monthly and the quarterly. And then finally on the following page, page 11, we have the monitor performance indicators. So these are indicators that we monitor. These aren't targeted. We report on these for information purposes. And that is the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. I've got Councillor White in, please.
Thank you, Chair. I thought colleague over there was first. I think a couple of questions about me. It's really for clarification, so that I do fully understand it. With the long-term empty homes, Swale was originally part of the No Use Empty scheme that KCC run, and we used to report on those homes that have been brought back into use under that scheme at no cost really to this council. So I'd just like some clarification about those numbers and whether we're still involved as a council with that KCC scheme. In the year-end amber indicators, when we talk about the processing of planning applications, are we, just to be clear, we're talking about the processing of the application or the decision making and the completion of those applications? And similarly with planning enforcement, are we simply talking about letting the complainant know that we've received it, or are we talking about bottoming out the enforcement and clearing it off the desk? So those three clarifications would be very helpful. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Potter, can you help us with those, please?
Yes, so the first one, I think it's long-term empty homes and whether that's still part of the KCC scheme. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question. I'll have to go away and consult other officers for that information and come back to you unless anybody else in the meeting has that information. Unfortunately, I don't. On planning applications, this from receipt until a decision's been made. That's the timing for those. And for enforcement, you're quite correct, Councillor. It's until those informants have been initially contacted on the initial enforcement complaint. It's not timing to resolution.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
And much obliged to the officer. I just wondered whether is there another key monitoring indicator about the enforcement and how long they're taking and whether they're being resolved at all?
And not that we report on corporately, no. Whether there's an internal one that's kept within the planning department, they obviously do have lists of complaints and they do monitor the enforcement complaints, but it's not a KPI that we report corporately. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to bring Ms. Fillery in, please.
Thank you, Chair. On the No Use Empty, this indicator is about our own resource that we no longer have, and that is not in the budget for this year. So the No Use Empty, as I recall it in my previous life, was a grant that was awarded to homeowners to bring their houses back into use. So that would need resourcing unless that was done by KCC. So I would imagine that with the KCC, we would still facilitate that if there was no direct resource required from us, because this empty homes post is now no longer in the structure.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer, please.
Thank you. I did try and catch your attention earlier. It goes back and relates to the missed bins. I can't believe the figures there. And I think part of the problem is I believe it's recorded from what's recorded on the website. And a lot of people don't use the website to record. And sometimes when there's a large area of bins being missed, then the website is apparently turned off. So people can't report. And I think cleansing will hold the information of when Biffa reports the number of missed bins, particularly when it's a large scale, because sometimes I look at that and I think if my residents looked at that, they'd think it's talk about Newington over a month. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll bring our Director of Resources in, if I may.
Thank you. I prepared for this one. I spoke to Martin earlier. And so the missed bin KPI is based on 40 bins per 1,000 collected. And when we do in excess of 120,000 collections a week, this does amount to less than 1% of the bins missed. I misunderstood when it's switched off. That is usually when there is an incident, means they can't get to the road. So that's not a penalty if it's snow or the road's blocked or something like that. So that then it's not missed in this context, rather than it being a known reason, rather than it's just one that's been missed in a road. And the point has always been raised, if it's not recorded by this route, then we're not picking it up. But unfortunately, that is our method of recording them. And until we've got something that potentially has to run beside it, which would then be two sources of information to try and monitor. So at the moment, it's the best way that we have got of trying to capture this information. So that is what we've got to report on. We are hoping with the new contract that the systems at the what are they called? No, not yeah, the income and the contractor will be able to provide us with more information on this, and we are working with them in the lead up to the contract on that.
No, I don't. If I can come back to you, if that's all right. I don't think a lot of the missed bins are just down to purely road closures, etc. It might be staff shortages, it may be vehicle breakdowns, but I think that's a key indicator, because that identifies a problem with the contractor, or possibly a problem with the contractor. I accept it may be a problem because there's heavy traffic on the road because of diversions, etc., or closed tips, but that could all be highlighted. But the information is held, and I think it would be useful to see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt, please.
Thanks. I've got two things. I'll start with the bins, as that's what we're on, which I think these figures are a load of rubbish. But I am wondering how this actually is. I know we just all heard there about what comes forward and how, but I know with Biffa, I've had incidents where residents have complained that a whole street is gone. When it's actually gone into the system, Biffa's reported them as not presented, and that they're not even reporting properly when it goes back in. And I think that's a major issue that needs sorting. But if we haven't got the right figures coming to us, there's no point having the figures in the first place. But I just hopefully that new system does work better. But I can imagine, unless the service is absolutely flawless, that figure is going to rise massively if you start looking at it properly. The other thing you've got is on the end red indicators, again, the empty housing. I'm not actually understanding it. I know that the year-end value was at 0 because I assume there's no officer in post, so you're not going to have anything to be able to do it with. But to get rid of it, I think it is an important thing that we understand how we are dealing with it. But it almost seems to be that, well, now there's not an officer in post, we don't have to worry about the numbers. The problem's still there. We still need to know what those numbers are. And as it says in here, is that it's still going to be dealt with through enforcement officers as part of the normal role. So there is still going to be people working on it. So that there's that thing of it not work still being done and not having the details of it, but also, are the officers going to be able to cope? Because if they're just putting that into their normal everyday work as it is, have we got the resources to cope with that? Because I know a lot of departments at the moment are having extra work put over to them and it's not getting done.
Okay, I'll let our Chief Exec come in if I can.
So the reason the post was deleted because we went out twice to advert and couldn't find anyone to do the job. It being done as part of, so to bring an empty home back into use is very, very difficult. It's very time consuming. Planning officers will do it for the most where we're having complaints of disrepair and real problems. So often they would end up doing, it would be a partnership to do that anyway. The ones that often the empty homes officers in other councils and in this council when we had one, the work they did was around early identification, trying to often talk to people if there was something going through probate and there was, that's why it was empty. Do we have the resource to be able to do it? Not to the degree that we did it when we had an officer, but where there are properties in disrepair, planning enforcement will look at it. But we don't have the resource to do it at the level. But it's not only do we not have to have the resource, when we had the resource, we couldn't find anybody to do it. So it's not just a money issue. It's a fact when we had the money, we couldn't recruit the staff.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harrison, please.
Thanks, Chair. A couple of points on the empty homes. There will. We used to have a committee called Performance Review, and we had books of these things, and members very kindly used to pull up. You were supposed to have done 66 and you've only done 65. And why is that? We used to grill them on all of this stuff. So if you put a figure in at the end for the end of the year, knowing full well they ain't going to reach it, then it's just making a rod for somebody's back. So I do sort of understand it, but I also know that when members complain about empty stroke derelict properties, and which could be causing a hazard to neighbours, and they go and inspect, it could well be that they utilise this route, but not literally go out with a list of empty houses and see what ones they can bring out into use, because we ain't got that anymore. So it'll be like a byproduct, if you like. My second point was on the contaminated loads. We've spent so much time and effort over the years trying to educate our residents on this. And it just, there was one recently where somebody complained that their bin had been missed. They neglected to say recycling bin, by the way, they neglected to say they'd put a full bottle of wine and a metal plate in it. They wondered why it had not been emptied. I mean, well, I better not say any more, do I? And the third point, we do have a list of dates for member training for the year. We don't know what they're going to be. The third point was at the bottom of our page 7. I don't know where Tony got his page numbers for, because I haven't got a page 11. And that is the street cleaning. Now, I've been here a number of years, and there's been a variety of ways in which street detritus is measured. There used to be the pictures, and if it looks like this, it's an A, and if it looks like this, it's a B, and if it looks like this, it's a C, and all the streets are graded and all the rest of it. But our residents still think that the road sweeper should be round, once a month, once every 2, at least on a regular basis. That's not the way the contract works. So what I was wondering was, is there an intention to do some sort of briefing for members going forward? We will have the new contract. So whatever our thoughts are on the past, and hopefully it won't get much worse before we get the new one, there will be a new contract, and I think every member should understand, or at least be given the information. If they don't understand, that's not my problem, of how street cleansing is going to be done. So that was a question. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Harrison. That is the intention for one of the training sessions. So I will take that back to the team as well to say that it's been requested as well.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I widen the discussion a bit? Councillor Harrison mentioned previous ways of looking at this, and she and I both go back to when this was about a 20-page report, and the discussion would go on for an hour. picking up tiny little queries. Looking at it more broadly like this, I think is a benefit. But I do have quite a big but at the end of that. And that is, how long is it since we looked at trying to identify what are the most important indicators, performance indicators to the public, and what are the most important performance indicators to members in terms of querying how effective departments are working. And I don't particularly want a detailed answer to that. But let me tell you, I think it is quite a long time since we looked at that. And I would like to propose that at least over this year, we review our KPIs and our measurements such that by the beginning of next year, we have better definitions of exactly what we're measuring, and we make a series of decisions on, is this worth measuring or is it not worth measuring? Because we've talked quite a lot about empty houses. If we don't have any mechanism for putting an empty house back into use, there's not much point in saying it's a key performance indicator, because clearly it's not. And I think I'd much rather look at 15 or 20 things which are truly measurable and important, rather than 40 or 50, half of which may not be very measurable, and where the importance is at least arguable. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
So I think, Councillor Henderson, you're right. There is no point in, for every one of these performance indicators, the question we have to ask is, so what? Knowing something's bad, if you're not going to do something to make it better, then there's no point in knowing that it's bad. So, and we could have all these performance indicators as green, but actually we're monitoring the wrong things. So I think that's absolutely right for us to have a look at what we're monitoring and get with members an agreement of monitoring things that actually have a tangible benefit. There are some things we have to monitor nationally, and therefore we report those and we can't change them. But it is about, I'm sure Tony, the last thing Tony wants to do is chase people for performance information if it's not leading to service improvement. And fundamentally, that is what performance information should do. So I think it's a completely, a good point.
Thank you. Councillor Boyne, please. Oh, sorry. Yes, yeah.
Say, I propose that we might do that over this current fiscal year or administrative year. Is that a reasonable timescale? In which case, can we make it a proposal and actually agree to do it?
Yes. Yeah, that's fine. On Councillor Whiting, please. Yeah.
When you say fiscal year, would you be happy with your municipal year?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do it in the municipal year.
Okay, that's fine. So we've got that proposal then from Councillor Henderson, seconded by Councillor Whiting. Those in favour? Oh, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, surely these, I've been reminded by my colleague, these will fall out of the corporate plan when we review, refresh and all the rest of it and agree a corporate plan. Your KPIs fall out of it. You can't put the cart before the horse, surely.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. So
Sorry, Councillor Bonney, please come through the chair. Thank you.
So I think Councillor Harrison, you're right, but if we're reviewing it over the municipal year, that gives us time for the cart to follow the horse of the corporate plan. So that's you know, you're absolutely right. There are some things. The corporate plan is a strategic document, and some of these are kind of bread and butter of running the council. So it is about, you have your strategic document of your corporate plan, but there are, on the day-to-day, what is important to members to be monitoring to make sure that we're not doing the shiny stuff, and actually the bits that residents are, you know, want to know whether we're doing. So I think there is a bit of both, but it will absolutely fall out the corporate plan, which is why the municipal year is a achievable timescale.
Thank you. So Councillor Henderson, can you just put your proposal forward again, please?
That during this civic year, we review the indicators which we look at, and we make a decision before next April that in 24/5 we are looking at something which might be exactly the same, but at least I think it likely would have some changes in it.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor White, are you happy to second that still? Thank you. Members, any further comments on this? Okay, those in favour? Yeah, absolutely. Those against? Abstentions? Okay, so that's passed. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, Councillor Bowen, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Try that again. I've got a few questions, observations. On first one's on the coming back to the bins. Echo what's been said, and particularly by Councillor Palmer as well, in terms of Councillor Hunt said, I think it's a load of rubbish in terms of the figures. I mean, I think in several of our wards we can already say, or we can assume, because we don't know for sure, but from what we get told by residents, is actually, certainly from what I hear in my ward, Tenement Linstead, is that most weeks, somewhere in the ward, a bin has not been collected. Now, whether that's down to vehicles, whether that's down to vehicle fires, as we know, I totally get that and don't want to put people at risk. It seems also at times in our ward, it felt at times they couldn't be bothered to go down there. Oh, there was a branch across the road. We can't get it down there. Whether other weeks it's been absolutely fine. But one thing that covers all of this, at the end of the road of this, are the residents who've put their bins out week after week, and they're not being collected, and they don't get told why it's not being collected, and assume maybe they'll be back tomorrow. But quite often they're not back tomorrow. So I think it's actually more of a fundamental review on terms of how this actually operates, and how do we tell and keep our residents informed where there are misses going around, and actually, is it something which I'll bow to the chief exec in terms of whether we are able to do this? Could we make a recommendation that actually this is something which I presume is the Environment Committee, which actually needs to take a longer look at in terms of the service provision, particularly in this area, of why bins are not being collected, how it's being reported, and how these figures are being come to make it better for the people that actually we represent, being the residents. One of the quick questions on this, somebody's asked me to ask, in terms of the BIFA staff, do they work 5 days a week, or are they also on 4.5? I've got a few other questions further on to the report if I may come back later, but they would.
Right, so I'd like to make just a general comment and some of my experience. So in my ward, I've got Shortlands Road, Goodnestone, quite tight terrace streets and so on. But what I would say is, when residents contact me and I say, when did you report it? Oh, we haven't. And so therein lies an issue too, because if it's not, it's like the police, if it's not reported, not recorded, it didn't happen. So kind of we need both sides of the coin. But exactly as we heard here, people are experiencing very, very similar issues.
So reporting is really important, and it's that same as the leader said. It's about that. How we let people know in the new contract, we're working with the new contractor and an organisation or a product called Granicus, and that is used in quite a few councils. Bradford, I know, is one because I know of it, and it enables, and I know members have had a huge frustration about this. It enables us to send text messages to say, actually, there's a problem, your bin won't be collected. And so that will be a big change in the new contract. There will be people that have not had their bins collected because it's contaminated. They may not feel it's contaminated, but it is. But I think the issue is, I don't think we can say the figures, with certainty what the figure is. If it's one person per ward that's having a missed bin, that's less than the figure. If you times it by 52 weeks, that's less than the figure we're reporting. So people are getting that. People there is sometimes issues. What we need to do, and through the use of in-cab technology, we need to be able to very clearly demonstrate where we have missed bins. We need to make it more simple for residents to tell us that they've had a missed bin, but that with the new in-cab technology, it might be that there will be pushback to say, actually, we went past your property and your bin wasn't out. BIFA staff are not council staff. They work for BIFA, so their contracts haven't changed. They don't have a 34-hour week contract as we do. And when we did the comms on the 34-hour week changes, we were very clear that bin services wouldn't be affected by this. So they're not. They're still on the. I don't know what their contracted hours are, because it may be 40, it may be 37. I don't know, but we contract them to collect the bins, and that's what happens.
And coming back, is this something which we can ask the Environment Committee to look at? So I presume it sits with them. I've got a couple of other questions on table 5, but I can come back to those later if you want, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Kavanagh, please.
Thank you, Chair. More about the bins, I'm afraid. Before the election, someone asked me, a resident, was street cleansing actually monitored? And I naively said, oh, I'm sure it is. Now I know better. Now, last week, there was a post on the Swell Borough Council site saying about BIFA was short of staff. With respect, don't care. But there were going to be 3 extra collections on Saturday, 1 on Sunday. I posted that on all the local Facebook groups. If nothing happened by Monday, to ring in. Now, most people in my area, which is easy access, they were brown bins, so people are paying for that. And that is particularly important for them. Monday came and went, apparently. Some bins got taken, not others. Tuesday, others. It's getting worse. Now, I appreciate BIFA is not going to get the contract next year, but what can we do to keep them providing an efficient service until the contract ends? Because it's getting worse, and I, in good faith, are saying, oh, it'll be fine, but it's not. Thank you.
So for any of councillors that have worked with Kelly, they will know that she investigates every single complaint. She holds BIFA to account. In reality, the only thing we can do with BIFA is it's a penalty. It's a financial penalty. We can't make them do things. All we can do is penalise them for not doing it. I want to say it's an easy thing to say we're in the last year of the contract and there isn't the potential. But I also think they do have some very good staff at Biffa that do go out of their way, but not everybody. And it is usual that contracts dip. That's when the contract monitoring gets worse. Gets more important. I've seen and spoken to Kelly when residents have phoned me directly and have said there's a problem. I've spoken to Kelly, I've spoken to Biffa, who have assured me that they would go, assured Kelly and assured me, and then they haven't turned up. So there are problems. The vast majority of our bins are collected. When we have an issue, we prioritise our statutory services. We don't have a statutory requirement to collect green waste. You're right, that's what people pay for, but it's not our statutory requirement. And the health and the health issues around not collecting green waste aren't the same as the health issues around not collecting residual waste, which is the non-recyclables. So we do focus on that first. That sometimes means that residents pay for their bins anyway, but residents that are paying separately for a service feel more aggrieved. But that's not something we can change, because statutorily we have got to make, we've got to make that change. What we do for the people that have green bin missed, and I think any of us that have green bins, and I'm under the same contract where I live, you put your green bins out thinking, right, I can mow the lawn again once I've done it, and they don't come, and that feels terrible. What we do is we extend the period so people get those weeks added on to their contract. But if it's the middle of summer and you want to do more gardening, I can understand that's not great. But we will always prioritise collecting the residual waste because we're statutorily obliged to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Bonney, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the issues around bin collections, and certainly I have had a conversation with Kelly a few times where we've reported bins that are missed, and she said, oh, the contractors not made us aware of that being an issue, and that's happened several times, hence my collective scepticism on the numbers as well. So that's the first point. And the second point is regarding long-term empty homes. I do think it's an indicator we need to drop. I think if we're going to have indicators, it's got to be ones where we can influence them going forwards, and that we have some power to do something. Signing a landlord or an owner up to a KCC scheme isn't really solving the issue. Whacking them with penalty council tax is one thing, but that's only dictated from government. And the planners sitting on applications for a couple of years, and I've been approached recently by someone who has patiently waited for over 2 years and not had a determination on their application that would have brought property that's currently empty into use, would be a far more useful spend of our time analysing that than to put an indicator in where there is no officer post and we don't have the power to do anything. So there are things we can do, but I think we should focus our attention on those that are most appropriate.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock, please.
A couple of things. Firstly, I'd like to fully back up the statement that Kelly, I think, is excellent. She's always very quick to get onto Biffa and to and to report back. One of my questions is, we hear about these fines. I think there are quite a few. But what happens to them? I'd like to see that money being allocated to something, especially if there's certain areas that constantly get affected, allocated to that community. I suspect we use it as a bargaining tool and say we'll give some money back if they pull their socks up. But no, they should be pulling their socks up anyway to see. So yeah, I'd be interested in what happens with the fines. But it's a good job that we've got a new contract coming up where hopefully the reporting will be a bit tighter. I just wanted to talk about a couple of these indicators. Firstly, the percentage of invoices paid on time. I'm glad, I've mentioned this before, I'm glad that we've now reaching the target, but it really is important, small, especially when it's smaller companies, but we pay those invoices. I know there are some councils got a really bad reputation. I would hate that we ever fell into that category. But yeah, it is vital that we pay our invoices on time. I just wanted to talk about planning, because we've heard a lot of criticism about planning, and how our planning department is in chaos, and how we're not measuring up. So although we haven't met the target for major applications, we've only just missed it by 2.3%, and we are improving. Minor applications, 93.5%. Other applications, 96.6%. That is a really high number. And when people say, we've got problems in our planning department, this shows that the bread and butter work, majority of stuff, 19 out of 20 of the claims are being done on time. And then we also hear how we waste money on appeals. I think that came from some quarters. And how we're ridiculous in the stuff that we send to appeal. Portion of major planning applications overturned at appeal, target 10%. Last year's outcome 4.4%. But over 19 out of 20 planning applications, we win. That's major planning applications. So I think that's it's worthy of comment, because people always get snippy about planning. Those are actually really good figures. And the percentage of planning consultations responded to in 21 days, again, target 90, 93.7%. So I think the planning department has been through a rough period over the last 6 years. And I think it's really good that they are coming up with these sort of figures.
Thank you. And I would echo that as well, against a backdrop, of course, of the shortages we've had, and we're no different to any other council in terms of trying to attract planners to this organisation. So, yeah, okay, duly noted. Councillor Whiting, please. Oh, sorry.
I did ask a question about the fines.
Ah, yes. Looks like I've got an answer for you as well, Mike.
Yeah, so they will go into the budget, the waste budget, and then support the rest of the costs. So it will be in the overall budget position, and then in the year we won't necessarily have a target for the non-performance fines, but it will form the overall funding envelope of the waste team. And so, as you all know, we still are taking a net position from reserves. So if there is anything, if everything else goes to plan, and then that is a surplus, then it will just be a reduction in the amount we take from reserves. Invoice payments. Thank you. Yeah, so the blip that we had at the beginning of the year, unfortunately, I have got 2 people in that team and they were both off sick. So the fact that we still got our invoices paid, albeit not within the 30 days, and I think that is the only time that team have ever not met their target. So that's obviously not ideal position, but it is obviously something that we do prioritise, and the team are very proud of the position that they got to for the recovery from the position that they were in at the beginning of the year.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt.
It's just going back to bins again. Well, obviously, this committee is actually quite new to me as well, because being in the committee system, I've not been on P&R. We get these indicators. We've all spoken about bins and the issues, and there is obviously issues coming up until the new contract is in. I think probably there may be even more problems to come. I don't know what's happening with, obviously, the people that work at Biffa. I shouldn't begin thinking they're going to be out of a job. Got a new contractor, and whether they'll be taking them on. What's happening. So is there issues within Biffa where people are leaving? we talk about it here, look at all the indicators, what actually happens, because Councillor Bowen said about something going back to the Environment Committee. What we talk about here, what happens with it next, because there's things that need to be looked at to make sure that these indicators that we're seeing, what's the next steps, basically.
Right, okay, Larissa?
So the staff at Biffa will have been told that they're not having the contract. They would have been told before it went public. They then go through a TP process, and that means that they will be moved lock, stock and barrel. There will be negotiations between the incumbent contractor and Biffa to say, this is the TP list of who's on it, and then Suez will either say, yes, that's fine, or no, that's not fine, or, you know, we think this person shouldn't be on it. So there is a bit of that going on, which is unsettling for staff until they know. Then they're going to a new employer. That's also unsettling for staff because, you know, it is for anybody. We haven't been told that they're losing staff because of that. We do know that there are a shortage of drivers, because when a different company opens up in the area, so for example, if there's an Amazon warehouse opening up in Kent, that the drivers could get paid more. So there is a natural turnover because there is a shortage of drivers nationally. There is a churn of staff. So it is unsettling for the staff at Biffa. Some of them will have been through this before because that's what happens every time someone loses a contract. People have been to Veolia and then Biffa win it from Veolia and then so and so, you know, and also when companies have merged. So it is unsettling, but it's not something that we've been made aware that is a major risk at the moment. But we do know with very low unemployment, with the opportunity to earn more elsewhere, people sometimes take that opportunity.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Councillor Bowen, you wanted to come back on another item. Well, sorry, 1 second.
So I didn't answer your second point. Your second point about what happens now. If you look around the room, you will see chairs of the other committees sitting on this chair, this group. It is up to those chairs to say, actually, do I think this is something for my committee to look at? If Councillor Lehman, as chair of the Environment Committee, feels that actually it's something that needs to be looked at, that's something that he can look at. But what would happen is a report would need to go to his committee setting out the parameters of what they're asking officers to look at, and officers would look at those parameters. What I would say is, in this case, as we're in the last year of a contract, there would be the question of what is, you know, doing a review of the current service. Unless we've got time and we know things can improve, is it better to put that energy of officers into, you know, banging that contract management and, you know, absolutely every time we're hitting it hard? Or is it more important, whilst we're mobilising the new contract, to also do a deep dive into what's happening to that? That would be a decision, A, that the chair would make as to whether to put it on the agenda, and B, that committee would make. But that would be up to that committee to do. This committee can't tell that committee to do it.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's on table 5, the year-end outcome monitored performance. Just a couple of observations. With the number of households living in temporary accommodation, it's getting worse. The 2021 monthly average 312, 22-23 monthly average 369. Not a stats which nobody wants at all. So I'm hoping that we've got something which might be able to do to help with that. Long-term sickness slightly up, but I know there are reasons for that. So, but actually, I think that increase actually is not bad as well, given the environment out there. The one of it's the on the bottom, the safeguarding training. I thought, if I'm wrong, this I'll hold my hand up. I thought at the time when that was announced that was meant to be mandatory for staff and advisory, certainly for members. But we only see on this stat that 71% have attended it. So was it mandatory? And if it was, why? What are we doing to get that number up? Thank you.
Thank you.
So you're absolutely right on the temporary accommodation. The year, the end of year to end of year is significant. It is worse. That is really due to the numbers of people we've come through the door. What I would urge you to look at is if you look at Q2, which shows 388, 392 and 394, and then you look at Q4, 363, 354, 337, that demonstrates that is solely due to the work that the team have done. They've transformed the way they've worked. They've worked with DLUC, who have come down and worked with us, not in a we're coming to tell you what to do, but actually we invited them in to say, work with us, help us, tell us what's happening in other places. The team have completely transformed the way they work, their practices, their processes. They've undertaken additional training and it is improving. However, the national and local picture of rent increases, of cost of living crisis, of people who are no longer able to work due to sickness is increasing. So that's the problem, is we are doing some excellent work, but we are swimming against the tide the whole time. And I can't say that it's that trajectory is going to continue on down. What I can say is that we are much more we're moving into a place that's similar to the best performing, but it's still, and our ability to source temporary accommodation is becoming harder with more and more landlords coming out of the market, and it's a challenge.
Very quickly come back on that. Thank you for that. In terms of the figures also for homelessness, etc., homelessness doesn't just mean people sleeping under the porches on the high streets or in churchyard, wherever. Do we also monitor the information in terms of, because it was mentioned to us, this homelessness also includes potentially people sleeping within their cars because they haven't got a home, and sleeping on hard shoulders of the A249 or wherever that may be. How do we capture that, and what can we do to help that?
So we have the Rough Sleep Initiative team. They work with people who are what people would class as rough sleeping. They are the shop doorways, the graveyards. But we're also aware, when we're made aware of people sofa surfing, sleeping in their car, we do help them. However, the law is quite frameworked on what we can do, and if someone's not in priority need, we may not be able to help them then. And so some people may end up still sleeping in their car for a bit because, there is a process that we must follow. So we are aware of them. Some people we're not aware of, if rough sleeping or staying in their car, if somebody doesn't want to be seen or spotted, people will not be, we only know about, but we have people can phone and tell us that they think somebody's rough sleeping. We'll try and make contact. We'll try and help. But ultimately, there is an element that somebody needs to be prepared to be helped. And that is some of the complex nature of the clients we deal with, that it is rarely, their homeless problem is rarely due to not having a roof over their head. So safeguarding training is mandatory. Some of those figures will be because somebody was on a temporary contract and they left before because they were for a short period of time. I would be lying if I said that we didn't have some people that are very adept at evading training because they're got so much to do, and people are very, very busy. And so we have we now discuss that at EMT. We discuss all training, and that's something that Lisa actually was discussing last week at EMT. So we are making sure that staff attend. I am one of the members of staff that hasn't attended, but I was given dispensation because I did it just before I left my previous organisation, so I was in the time frame. But I'm on there as one that hasn't done it yet, but I am down to do it. You're right that it's not mandatory for members. The only training that we can mandatorily give members is planning and licensing, but we would encourage all members to undertake it. I'm just aware that the last lot of safeguarding training we did for members wasn't the best training that people had received, so we're reviewing that as well. Yes, but the actual quality of the training wasn't very good, so we're reviewing that.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask a question for scrutiny purposes on the audit recommendations implemented. I've got two questions, but the second question depends on the answer to the first. Can I have a narrative or a bit of a narrative regards to why that is such a low percentage that seems to be achieved on that, please?
Yes. So there were a couple of internal audit reports that were issued with recommendations, and the recommendations just did not get delivered or answered for several quarters. That's now been picked up, which is why we are now green. So a couple slipped through the net, unfortunately. So it was just the number of they weren't high risk recommendations, but they just weren't picked up when they should have been, and that has now been addressed.
So that pretty much answers my second question, except of course, just for reassurance purposes, that I'm aware that we can't recommend stuff to go back to committee, as that's been said several times this evening. So will the audit committee obviously see that result of those things being picked up and reported back to them?
Yeah, audit committee. Sorry, Chair.
Sorry for you. Apologies.
Audit committee see the detail of these reports, so they will see the internal audit reports and the recommendations that have been made, and that will be picked up at those committee meetings. But we have also introduced, as a result of this, when the recommendations are slipping, they come to EMT so that we can follow up as well. So this has kind of triggered another internal control process for us. But yes, that's what internal audit, that's what audit committee is there for as well. So
good to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. If it helps, you don't need to keep signaling, because once I've gone like that to you, I've got you down. That's all right.
Sorry.
I'm not a very pretty sight, I know that. Okay, I'm sorry.
Just to add to what Councillor Bowen said, as someone who works, I know it often is the case, I will go to any training as long as it's either evening or Saturday. I need to work in order to live. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Whiting.
So thanks, Chair. Just perhaps it's helpful to Councillor White and other new members. My understanding of the Constitution is that if you can take a motion to full council, which then gets referred to the relevant service committee. So while this committee can't refer directly to a service committee, full council is able to, if you can get the support of the other, the majority of the 47 councillors in doing that. So whether that's a helpful device. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. So members, can we now note this report then, please? Oh, sorry, Councillor Rich. Councillor Lehman, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say, as a précis to what I'm about to ask, Councillor White and myself spent about 4 hours today with Martin Cassell, Head of Service in Environment, and the majority of that time was talking about bins. And I've noted everything that's been said about bins in the last 45 minutes as well. Having said that, I've got a couple of questions that have been relating to the indicators. Sorry. I notice on the final indicator, percentage of household waste sent for reuse and recycling, it has been red for 6 months from September through till February. And I'm guessing that's down to seasonal fluctuations caused by garden waste. If someone is able to confirm that that is the case, please. And do you want the next question now, or should we? Okay. And the other question is, I just wanted to clarify, we're talking a lot about missed bins and no one can understand the number of bins being so low that are missed. I'm guessing, just so that we're all on the same page here, there's 140,000 bins and target of 2,342. That is a monthly, or target is 2,301. That's per month, not per year, isn't it? Good. Just checking. Thank you. So that's 100 bins missed per ward per month on average. Yeah.
So yes, per week.
25 bins per week per ward.
It's whether how many residences there are.
Well, obviously it will vary by ward size, but on average.
So people have more than one bin. So people will have 140, there are 140,000 bins. I think there are 69,000 residents, no, 76,000 residences. So people have the bin. So yes, that is what that figure is. The recycler figure is there are seasonal fluctuations. There are seasonal fluctuations due to our paper recycling increases at Christmas.
All right.
And I never worked out why, but apparently it does. I think it's all the things Father Christmas brings, but we lose other things, and that's the issue. So there are seasonal changes largely due to green waste, but also our figure would be higher if we could increase the amount of food waste and if we could decrease the amount of contamination. That is the way to get our recycler higher. The other thing that we are absolutely working with Kent to do is actually reduce the amount that people can recycle, in that we're reducing packaging and we're reducing the amount of waste as a whole. But yes, it is the green waste.
I'll just come back on that quickly. First of all, I fully wholeheartedly support working with KCC to increase recycling. I think not closing any of our HWRCs would be a good way to go about that. Secondly, forgotten what my second point was because I was so pleased with the first one. Is it possible to have, if we know that this indicator fluctuates throughout the year, is it possible to have that monthly target in line with expectations, or is it just a case of it's always going to be red, green? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And finally, I've got Councillor Henderson. Did you want to come back? No? Okay. The Chief Executive told me a fib then. Thank you. Okay, members. So those in favour of noting the report, duly noted. Thank you very much. We move on to item 5 then, membership of subcommittees.
Thank you,
Shall we
Chair.
introduce the report first?
Thank you, Chair. This is a self-explanatory report, does what it says on the tin. So it's asking the Policy and Resources Committee to agree the membership of the Appointments Subcommittee, the Investigation and Disciplinary Subcommittee, and the Statutory Officers Disciplinary Appeals Subcommittee. And that's based on the group's nominations, which are attached as Appendix 1 on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions on this one? You had your chance. Okay, could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Baldock, thank you. Seconder. Councillor Whiting, thank you very much. Those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. Item 6 then, which is membership of the Planning and Transportation Policy Working Group. Can I ask our officer to introduce this one for us, please?
Thank you, Chair. Same again. One moment, I've lost my internet suddenly briefly, sorry. Bear with me 1 second, sorry.
Joe, would it help if I introduced it?
Thank you. Everything's gone from my screen.
Okay, sorry. So this is the membership of the Planning Transport Working Group. It's the group, it's very clear what it does, and the appendix sets out the group nominations for Planning Transport Working Group.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock.
Thanks, Chairman. I'd like to nominate Councillor Alistair Gould as chair and Councillor Monique Bonney as vice chair. I think we ought to be doing that.
Sorry, just take some advice.
Sorry, the view is that the people that would choose the members of choose the chair are the members of that committee.
Councillor Baldock, want to come back?
That means that there'll be nobody to agree what goes on the agenda, and officers won't have anyone to officially be able to discuss and work with in setting up the first meeting. Last year, we certainly set it at this meeting.
Through the chair, please.
Obviously, if on that previous occasion we either had the meeting pre-publicised and the agenda set out as we did at full council for the other meetings in relation to that, then that would have been a way that we could have done that. We haven't done that this evening, so on that basis, we need to do it at the first meeting of the committee.
Councillor Baldock.
No, we didn't, because we had to do it at PNR. We weren't able to do it at full council. It had to be done at PNR. And we sat here. It's a working group, yeah. And the working group agreed who would chair and vice chair it for the very practical reason that you need someone to organise what's going to be on the agenda.
Could we a solution may be to agree a chair and to nominate a chair and a deputy chair for the first meeting, and then that enables that to happen, and then the meeting do the permanent chair and vice chair.
Yeah. Could I just call a hold for a minute? I got John Millard indicating.
Sorry, Chair, I was just going to raise, this is a similar issue to what we have with JTB, where the chair and the vice chair are actually agreed at the first meeting. Thank you.
Right, okay, we're agreed that we'll appoint a chair this evening.
Find you choosing Councillor Baldock over me once, but not 3 times.
With respect, Councillor Henderson, I did indicate to you that I would come back to you when this element was finished, and he's still speaking, and we're still debating that element, and I'll come to you when I'm finished. Thank you.
But it's this point I want to be part of the debate on.
And you will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think this is really quite important. Wherever it is possible, the committee should appoint its chairman and vice chairman from within the membership. I think the issue of chair and vice chair being imposed on a committee is not good democratic practice, and all we are saying, or all we appear to be saying, is there may be some difficulty in settling the agenda for the first meeting, but it's not a problem which we can't get over. We could, for example, if an officer were to speak to one member from each of the political groups represented on the committee, or even each member of the committee, we could easily settle an agenda and then appoint chair and vice chair at the meeting. it seems to me the argument for doing it now is in order that a chair and a vice chair can be settled by the administration rather than democratically. And if we are not there in terms of knowing what we're going to do about this, may I propose that we nominate chair and vice chair at the first meeting? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen.
Nearly stood up there, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I'm just trying to load the constitution up. So it hasn't come up, so I'm clutching at straws a little bit on this, but it might help potentially. Can I move a motion without notice? And the motion being that the members proposed from the Planning and Transportation Working Group agree this evening between them who will be chair and vice chair of that working group. Or committee, whichever. But if we as a committee agree a motion that says that you're happy for that to happen, that gets over this issue of who's going to be in the chair for the first meeting. Trying to be helpful.
Yeah, I'm glad somebody is. Thank you.
The officer advice, and it is only advice, is that the committee, I accept there's a notice of that motion, I'm not trying to talk over that, that the committee nominate a chair and vice chair for the first meeting, and then that will set the agenda. But the first item on that agenda will be to appoint a chair and a substantive chair and vice chair. So therefore, we don't have holding a meeting with everyone coming in to say, have a chair and vice chair, and then everyone goes home. But the working group, other than the first agenda setting, will be done by the voted on chair.
In which case I'll withdraw my notice of the motion, but I'll propose exactly that and ask for a second, and then maybe we might be able to move on.
Okay, Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, I'm happy. I think that's a very sensible way forward. I am totally insulted by Councillor Henderson's suggestion that I was trying to do something anti-democratic, and I would ask that he rescind that because I find that very hurtful.
I was not suggesting that you personally were doing anything anti-democratic. I said doing it that way is less democratic than electing it at the meeting. If you believe I was aiming that comment directly at you, then I assure you I was not.
Thank you. So we've got the proposal now from Councillor Bowen. Yeah, okay. Yes, you can, Councillor, yeah.
Just to understand it, I agree with it, but what we're told is that the reports are officers' reports and not from what we would be requesting to come forward. So why is there a need for a chair and vice chair to be involved? If his officers have got a report that needs to come forward to those meetings, surely those reports are coming whatever, whether there's a vice chair or chair to set the agenda.
I move to the vote.
Yeah. So the chair sets the agenda. The officers work with the chair to set the agenda. Officers, just the reason we did all of those meetings at full council is I couldn't, I'm the chief officer for this committee, I couldn't just come and say, right, this is what we're talking about. What I can do is say to the chair, I think we need to talk about this, this and this, but it is up to the chair, who is an elected member. That is why what will happen in reality is whoever is the chair for the first meeting, officers will have a list of things that they wish to, but it has to have agreement from a chair because that is the way our constitution works. So we can't just have officers just turning up and saying, this is what we're doing.
All right, can we move to the vote on that then, please?
Do Do you want me to repeat that?
Yes,
The
please.
proposal that for until the first meeting and until the start of the first meeting, the chair of the working group is Councillor Alistair Gould and the vice chair is Councillor Monique Bonning.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Lehman. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? Abstentions. Okay, so that's carried. Thank you, members. We now move on to items, sorry.
Thank you. Just for clarification, so in terms of the makeup of the group, I'm pretty sure I was told several weeks when we were looking at this that the group needs to be made up of members from this committee. It doesn't matter this in terms of the nominations. That's what I'm sure I was told, but I've seen the report. It said it doesn't have to be. So for absolute certainty, so future work members of this work group does not need to be members of this committee.
The reason was we had a discussion last year and there was the issue around, as Councillor Huntley was on it last year, but he wasn't a member of P&R, and often or sometimes the councillors that are interested or that is their thing are not. So it was agreed by all sides that the Planning and Transport Working Group, this is why it's a working group and not a subcommittee, so it doesn't have to. But that was a big discussion that we had last year.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson?
Yeah, can I just query in terms of this question of membership, if you go back to the written part of the report, oh, the light's terrible. Paragraph 3.3 says it may be that the committee will wish to appoint the same number of members that's as previously to the working group, and note that in order to be proportionate, there should be 8 members from the administration, 2 from the largest opposition group, and 1 from the smallest opposition group. Which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you then look at Appendix 1, that isn't actually what it says. It says there will be 7 members from the administration, 3 members from the largest opposition group, and 1 member from the smaller opposition group. And I just wonder which is meant to be correct.
Councillor Baldock?
Yeah, it only has to be rough. It isn't required to be proportionate. And when establishing the balance, this seemed to be the fairest way of doing it. We were being nice, if you like. I think it's reflects what it was previously. And whilst I've got the floor, I'm happy to move recommendations 1 and 2, which is agreeing 11 and agreeing with nominations in Appendix 1.
Thank you. I'm just going to bring Councillor Hunt in.
Yeah, happy to second that.
Thank you. Excellent.
But I've just got a question on 3.1. With the way that the proportionality is done, it's got administration and then Conservative opposition, Lib Dem opposition. On the previous agenda item, it was done group by group, and everything else that we've done as percentages is group by group. Why is this listed as different? It may make no difference when it actually comes to it, but it's just not consistent with other approaches that's been done. Is it officially done as an administration, or is it done as group per group?
Good question.
Yeah, I'll just, Joe Millard, could you assist us with this?
Yes, Thank you, Chair. I have got that other information. I had various charts that I could have put in that place there, and I can circulate that. They all come out the same way, but I didn't think it was necessary for you to see every single chart that we could have put in there just to show how that is done. But it, like you say, it does end up to be the same result in the end. Thank you.
Yeah, Lisa.
Yeah, and it's exactly because the reason that the last allocation was based on the administration and the opposition, when there were it was just the administration and one opposition. This was to help to clarify the position that there is the administration now and 2 opposition groups. So that's why this one is shown differently, because of the way that this specific committee working group is made up.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Mr. Chairman, can I suggest we plod on, because otherwise I'm going to move we adjourn the meeting, because that is totally out of order, against health and safety. You're almost blinded there. No,
Yeah,
no, he
it's
wasn't.
because I'm follically challenged, probably. But yes, thank you.
And if it was a smaller person, it would have happened earlier, I suspect. I should be moving into the corridor if my committee has the same problem.
Right. So we've had it proposed by Councillor Baldock, seconded by, was it Councillor Lehman? Thank you. Those in favour? So unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. So now we move swiftly on to agenda item 6. No, 7. Apologies. 7, which is a membership for joint arrangements. 1 second. I'll just get the officer to introduce it first. Appreciate your attempt at brevity at this late stage. Sorry, Joe Ballard, could you introduce this one for us, please? Oh, she can't.
I can do it. So,
Chief Exec will do it.
Yep, this is Mid-Kent Partnership. We, as I said at the briefing, it's the Mid-Kent Partnership Board runs our shared services. Each council can have 2 representatives. It is custom and practice that one of those representatives is the leader. And so at Appendix 1, we have the 2 nominations, which we currently have is the leader, Councillor Gibson, and the deputy leader, Councillor Baldock.
Can I have a proposal for those? Councillor Henderson.
Just to ask the question, is it not?
And again, it's come off again, Mike. That's it.
Is it not the case, because all the councils involved are involved in this, that in fact, would it not always be the leader and the deputy leader?
No, some councils have done it in the past, that it is the leader and a portfolio holder who has shared services that is not the deputy leader. So it's.
I would say at this stage, Councillor Henderson, that Councillor Baldock did try to wriggle out of it, but I wouldn't let him, unfortunately. So.
And but for STG, because it's also Mid-Kent and STG, that is the leader. And members will remember last year that was unanimously voted for Councillor Baldock, even though he didn't nominate or ask.
Good. Right, so could I have a proposal for those? Thank you. A proposer? Councillor Bourne, yes, thank you. So Councillor Bonney, propose it, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Bonney. Right, those in favour? So, as long as it's not a difficult one.
Hopefully not. Are we doing recommendation 1 or recommendation 1 and 2? And paragraph 7.1 makes reference to an appendix 2, which isn't in my agenda. I've just got it up on, sorry, my apologies. I've just got it up on mod.gov on here and it's not on there, but I've just gone on to the Swale Borough Council website and it is on there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So members, those in favour? Those against? And abstentions. So it looks like it's unanimous then. Thank you very much, members. And now final to agenda item 8.
Yes. For those of us who were given sets of papers, I don't know if there's any on there, where that appendix 2 wasn't there, can I ask Who has been nominated to sit on the STGB, STAY, whatever it was?
South Thames Gateway Building Control, just the leader. That one, just, yeah. Yeah. Exactly, yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yes, so now we're on our final agenda item, which is the forward decisions plan. Noted. Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, agree that. But can I make a proposal that we have blinds installed before full council next week?
Yeah, or somebody sitting in this chair that's got hair.
The reason that the blinds don't work is that the windows were put in that were a different size, and we have gone out to quote for blinds, and we will be getting them as soon as this is practical.
I hear they're coming on Friday,
So it could be in time,
but I won't stake my life on them being installed.
but we will look to see what we can do as a temporary measure.
Right, members. Okay, sorry, Councillor White.
Yes, Chair, sorry, just for expediency, I've got to get back for childcare. I know it's not a thing that affects everybody, but I was wondering if we could, can we finish? Brilliant.
Well, I don't know what part of that you didn't understand there, Councillor White, but there you go.
Just want to make sure, that's all.
Thank you very much indeed, members. Thanks for your attendance and forbearance on it, and look forward to seeing you next time.